Assalamualaikum, welcome to a brand new video. Welcome to library chat number 3. So in today's video, you'll not be able to see me because I like to share some of my books with you. In particular, this shelf here, which contains some very important books on textual criticism. Textual criticism is something that is very, very important, which not a lot of Christians actually pay attention to. We have varieties of books based on textual criticism which I've reviewed in the past. For example, we have from David Allen Black, New Testament Textual Criticism, a concise guide. Even for this pamphlet of a book, if I so may say, which contains about 50 pages or so. If you include the appendix, it will be about 60 plus pages. For some reason, to my knowledge, not a lot of Christians actually would read books on textual criticism, even though this is written from a conservative perspective. There are a couple of reasons over the years, based on my research, why not a lot of Christians are actually aware, to begin with, of textual criticism. That is because they have not actually been informed of this by their pastors or by their priests, by their clergymen. And for some reason, which I know, but the most popular reason is because these pastors and clergymen, priests, they have not actually exposed their congregants to the textual criticism of the New Testament, of the Bible even, the Old and the New Testament. And that is not because that these pastors and priests, they are not aware of textual criticism, but because they are afraid that their congregants might actually lose faith in Jesus as God, as part of the Trinity. At least that is my reason. At least that is the reason that I know of based on my research. You can correct me if I'm wrong. The other reason is that textual criticism is actually a very, very technical field, and it is not something that interests a lot of people, especially nowadays when the attention span of someone, like for example, it is already so difficult for pastors and priests to get Christians to actually read the Bible, right? And so a lot of reading sessions, or for example, ways to make the Bible interesting so that Christians will actually read them, right? Especially if you look at modern study Bibles, whereby you have all these maps and charts. It is filled with a lot of pictures to make the book actually readable and not bland and plain and boring, so that Christians will actually read them. But even so, it is very difficult to get Christians to actually read the Bible at their own time without so-called being pressured to do so every Sunday, or without being forced to listen to the sermons every Sunday or Saturday night. And so the idea of why I'm doing this library chat today here is I want to show you some of the books on textual criticism that is very readable, and it is not boring. But the information that you'll get by reading these books is fantastic. You get to learn about the manuscripts, right? Now, some people say that you actually need to learn this with a teacher or with a scholar. And I would say that I agree 20% to 30% of it, and I disagree the remaining 70%. And it is because you have books written by scholars, and these scholars actually spend their time reading. And if you learn directly from the scholars, it is going to cost you tons and tons of money to actually sit at a university campus. Whereas for a very small fraction of your course fee, you'll be able to have access to all this wealth of information that the scholars themselves will not be possible to teach you on a 1 hour, 2 hour session weekly. Right? So, because for them to write this book, it is actually years and years of research behind it. And even if you sit in a classroom, right, there will be some reading materials which you need to pre-read before you actually attend the lessons. And basically, you are just reading, and when you attend the lessons, it is actually for you to ask questions, for you to clarify on certain points that you probably underline, you are not clear of. For example, why is Codex Sinaiticus considered an Alexandrian text by Westcott and Hort? Why is it not a Western text? Right? So these are the kind of questions that you will ask when you attend a university course. Because most probably, not most probably, what happened is that the scholars will actually go through the materials from the textbook, right? Just as if you read the textbook yourself. And so, with that being said, it is worth spending the money definitely to get a university education. But it is, for me, it is much more worth it to have access to literatures, whereby the clarifications are actually being done online. For example, why is Codex Sinaiticus considered an Alexandrian text and not a Western text? Well, there are explanations of why on YouTube. Articles have been written. Why is Sinaiticus and Vaticanus an Alexandrian text? And why is it not a Byzantium text? Right? And so, you will also find small books on textual criticism. By that, I don't mean to insult. Small but very informative. But you also get magnum opus, right? Collection of essays. And this is for more advanced students. If you really want to go into the details as to why Sinaiticus is an Alexandrian text, then these are the kinds of literatures which are beyond introductory, which you must consult. Right? And so, with that being said, I'll repeat, I agree 30% that you should learn from scholars, no doubt. You should learn from scholars. Okay? But at the same time, you should not wait to save up money to learn from scholars at a university. Instead, you can preempt your studies and purchase books like this. Now, to have a small section of your library, of a library that contains these literatures, is expensive. It is very expensive. And I've acquired these literatures simply out of necessity. If I'm not doing what I'm doing, I will still acquire these literatures because I'm interested to begin with, but I will most probably not have as much literatures as I have here right now. And the reason why these literatures are on my shelf is because out of necessity, because I always research and I need these literatures as supporting evidence for my research. Because I can't just think out of the blue why the Byzantium text is a later text as compared to the Western or as compared to the Alexandrian text. I need proof, right? So with that, first you need to study the kinds of manuscripts. Okay, you need to study paleography. Right, you'll never be masters of paleography unless you actually engage in the practicality of it. But these are all theory, right, which will be helpful because I'm not a practicing scholar. I'm not even a scholar to begin with. Right, so I'm not practicing something that I read, or I'm not practicing, well, for now, at the moment at least. In the future, I don't know. But it is good to build your foundation with theories. Because to be an engineer, you need to have tons of theories, but you also need to be practical. You need to have the practical, the application of it. Whatever you learn, you apply, right? And for you to apply, most probably you need to be in the field. You need to be teaching, or you need to be engaging in archaeological activities, right? You need to be engaging in textual criticism. For example, if you learn Greek, right, then you'll translate portions of the New Testament, right, just to practice. Yeah, so it is important to have literatures that actually, if you are into the field and if you are really serious about studying, if you believe that the New Testament is the Word of God, which I don't believe, then these are all the literatures that you should consult. If you see all of the books that I've shown you, people from the conservative side will say that your literatures are all written by liberals. They're all written by, some of them they're written by even atheists or very, very liberal Christians, that they are borderline atheists or disbelief in the Word of God, in the Bible being the Word of God. But that is besides the point, actually. I even see that as a red herring, because you can't just go by their names and see their theology, and just because they wrote something that is, in fact, the reality of the current situation, the sits and the bend. And so, just because they have a certain opinion, or they projected a collective opinion and they wrote it down, you are going to label them liberals. I think that is an unfair judgment, because you are a Christian, or you are a Muslim, or you are a Jew based out of faith, right? Obviously, faith needs to be accompanied by sound and logical reasoning behind it, but it is majoritarily based on faith, right? And so you should leave your faith one side and also allow yourself to engage in the reality of the current situation. And that is through the studies of textual criticism. Because if you believe that the Bible is the Word of God, then you must be able to support that belief that the Bible is actually the Word of God. Right? And we don't get the Bible dropping down from the sky. Right? So it has to be printed, it has to be bounded, and it has to be put on the shelf of the bookstore, and that's when you go and purchase it. And so you need to know where the text actually came from. And again, I'll keep showing you here the tons of literatures. Some are very thick, as you've seen before, and some are just very, very small books, right? But no doubt they will give you tons of information that you actually need. And you just need 10 books on textual criticism. Or if you're on a very, very tight budget, you just need one. It doesn't matter which one to begin with. It doesn't matter which one. Because if you have no idea as to what textual criticism of the New Testament or the Bible is all about, the last thing you will be concerned of is which literature to get. Right? Obviously, you can do a review here and there, right? But you want to get a very small book, a very, very small book. And then you need to get, once you've made a purchase of this book, for example, you don't know what this book is about. Is this conservative? Is this liberal? Right? For example, you've looked at the reviews and you have a clue here and there, but you are not certain because you have not read the book. So read the book, make your own judgment call, and then try to find literatures that actually disagree with what the author wrote. And how do you discover that? Right? You can look at the bibliographies. Right? You can look at the bibliography. You can buy another book, for example. Right? And you can compare and contrast. Then after a while, from one book, you jump to another book on the same topic. After a while, you get a brief idea as to what textual criticism really is. But the most important thing is you have to weigh the evidence. You have to weigh the evidence. And you have to weigh the evidence from both sides, from the conservative side, also from the liberal side, so that your judgment or your scholarship is fair. So, for example, I have a book by Philip Wesley Comfort. Right? With a little bit of research, you know that Philip Comfort is more leaning towards conservative side. Okay? Very conservative side. But he is also willing to engage in the textual differences that are found in the different translations, in the different manuscripts. Same. You have Bruce Metzger. A little bit of research will tell you that he's a Christian, but he's more leaning towards the liberal side. Okay? Because he believes in something that is against the conservative side. The conservatives don't believe what he believes. For example, he believes that God can use myth to actually portray, to actually convey a message in his revelation. Right? So according to Metzger, tons of the literatures in the Bible, the biblical stories, they're all myth. Right? But according to conservative Christians, these are not myths. These are events that actually happen. For example, the gospel. Did Jesus in Luke say, "Father, into your arms I command my spirit"? Or did he say in Mark, my God, why have you forsaken me"? So, does that mean that Jesus actually called out to his Father twice, called out to God twice? Well, he was being put at a stake, according to the New Testament. Or did this event never happen to begin with? Or either one of the events happened. According to most scholars, it is actually Mark, because Mark is the earlier events. Okay, so which is which? It can't be both, unless you believe that Jesus cried twice. After he cried, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," he cried, "Father, into your arms I command my spirit." But then you'll be creating your own gospel, because Mark says a different thing and Luke says a completely different thing. Right? So one example is from Society of Biblical Literature, Scribal Habits in Early Greek New Testament by Rai. It is a magnum opus. It is a compendium, a study of ancient of scribal habits. When scribe wrote, why are there multiple changes in the manuscripts in the early 6 papyrus, right? P45, P66, P75, 72, so on and so forth. Okay, why do scribes change the text? What is the intention behind? And through understanding the scribal habits, we are able to determine the accidental changes from the intentional changes. And so these, just to be fair, these are not 100% scientific, okay, because we don't have scribes to interview, okay, and scribes can just write anyhow they want to write, right? They're human beings after all. Sometimes the mood affects us and we just want to change text for no particular reason, right? Even though there's always a reason behind it, right? But some people just do things out of no reason, and this appalled some people, right? And so we also have literatures. It's very difficult for me to remove this, but a general introduction to the Bible, as you can see here, written by conservative scholars. And so my so-called home library is filled with literatures that are written from the conservative side and also from the more liberal side. So the word liberal here should be used with caution, because it has been used as a form of label by the conservative side to undermine the argument, okay, to undermine the person to begin with, or the ideology, the opinion to begin with. And this is a red herring, because once you label someone as liberal, that gives some impression, especially if a pastor that you trust or a priest that you trust says that Eberhard Nestle wrote a very liberal book on textual criticism. Okay, that gives the impression, for example, whereby anything that he wrote, even though his argument is based on the Sitz im Leben, based on the present situation in life, it can automatically be discarded because he's a liberal. And so this is an unfair, right? This is a red herring, because in order for you to fairly judge someone, you have to entertain their thesis. You have to entertain the arguments in their thesis. And if you disagree with their thesis, you cannot just disagree because they're liberal. No, you have to disagree by bringing a counter-argument from another scholar, or something that you come up with yourself to refute the argument. But whether you have done successfully or not, for example, whether you successfully refute the argument of a particular scholar, is not up for you to decide, to determine, because it has to be scrutinized by others, which is why scholars wrote papers. And when they wrote papers, you find that other scholars actually present a counter argument to the paper that they had written, right? And that should be the approach. But majority of the videos, the comment section of my videos, as well as videos that I've watched on YouTube, a lot of the time the conservative side, conservative Christians, or whoever they are, because some I don't really know them, a lot of them I don't know, in fact all, instead of entertaining the argument that has been brought forward by the person making the video, the comments basically wrote something that is red herring. Nothing to do with the argument, doesn't address the argument. In fact, some of these people, I doubt that they even watched the video to begin with. But their point is just to comment something, because whatever that has been presented, the theses that have been presented in front of them, they are not able to respond academically because they lack knowledge in that field. Instead of them actually humbling themselves and learning and gain knowledge, they simply just want to bring down that particular person that has actually presented the argument. And so this is something that is academically disingenuous, and it is something that actually adds to the detrimental of the person who actually engaged in these sort of activities, because number one, they'll never learn to begin with, and number two, they just show that they are actually somebody that should not be taken seriously, because they are not actually serious to begin with in their pursuit of knowledge, in their pursuit of the truth. Right? They are just here for fun, for entertainment. They think that this is all jokes, right? But if you believe that there's heaven and hell, then obviously this is something that you should take seriously, right? Because everybody wants to go to heaven. People talk about heaven all the time. But from an Islamic theology perspective, you don't go to heaven simply just by reading books, simply just by engaging in da'wah, by praying your entire life without missing a salah, right? For Muslims, we go to heaven because of Allah's mercy. Okay. But anyway, in this video, I've shown you some of the books on textual criticism. Obviously, there are tons more. There's no point showing all of them. And so, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoy this sort of video, I'll tend to do more. But just so you know, I'm not recommending you these books so that you can actually go and make a purchase. Right? Go to the library if you have and borrow them, because these books are expensive. But whatever it is, I feel that it is something that you should pursue. You should pursue because you will learn a lot about the Bible to begin with. If you believe that this Holy Bible is the Word of God, then you must engage in learning where it actually came from, what is the state of the manuscripts, and how did it actually get to your shelf and into your hands. My name is Arfat. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.